Hey babies, GrannyDee back. Sorry, I was gonna come back on last night and finish this little bit of the Afterword of Tom Sawyer so we can get on to Dickens later on. And you know what happened? I fought. I FAWC'd. Fell asleep while crocheting. So, let's get back to the Afterword, and we were at Virginia City. And this just tells a bit about Sam Clemens, aka Mark Twain. Okie dokie, here we go. Silver. Oh, and I hope you caught my little kitty video late last night. If you haven't, go look. I'm sitting for my grandkitty, sitting for my daughter. Silver was king in Nevada. Sam tried prospecting for a short time, but unsuccessfully. He turned to newspaper work as a reporter in Carson City and then as editor for the Virginia City Enterprise. In his work for this paper, he first used the pen name Mark Twain. And if you didn't know, that has something to do with, well, I'll just read what it says. Mark Twain, the depth, D-E-P-T-H, call of the Mississippi pilots. So they'd call out Mark Twain, and that meant something, not sure what. Virginia City was violent and noisy. The streets were full of ore wagons and overland stages, full too of flannel-shirted miners, Chinese laborers and laundrymen, and Indians. After a day's toil in the mines, the miners liked hearty, rough amusements, palaces, which were saloons and dance halls, music with more volume than harmony, bullfights, dogfights, cockfights. These refreshed the men who spent their days with pickaxes. Oh, my kitty's awake. If you hear something weird, it's my washing machine in the background. Did my washing machine wake you up, kitty? I'm sorry. Let's see. These refreshed the men who spent their days with pickaxes hacking silver ore out of solid rock. Mark Twain knew them all. They were the stuff of his paper, and he recorded them in Roughing It. To progress from Nevada to San Francisco was logical for a rising editor. Mark Twain brought all of his experience on the Enterprise to the San Francisco Call, C-A-L-L. He wrote also for the Golden Era and Alta California. Kitty cat, you got food. Don't bother me right now, please. He met Bret Harte, the first outstanding literary figure he had ever known. And the next little subtitle is called The Jumping Frog. Twain's story, the celebrated jumping frog of Calaveras County, and maybe you've heard that story before. I have, but it's been a while. Maybe we'll read that later on. Was published the following year in a New York newspaper, the Saturday Press. It made him a nationally known writer of typical American humor. This story and other Western sketches made up his first published book. Here comes Kitty Cat. Come here, make an appearance. Come here. Just don't use me like a pincushion like you did last night. Come up here, come here. Show everybody. If I try to pick him up, he runs away. So here he comes. Here he comes. There he is. He's going to get on my head. Nah, that's a good kitty. Oh, Lord, I lost my place. Published book. Okay, here we go. The Sacramento Union sent him on a trip to the Hawaiian Islands, then called the Sandwich Islands, to write a series of travel letters for the paper. When he returned, the paper wanted him to take a trip around the world and to send back the same sort of travel letters. In New York, he joined a party traveling on the Quaker City to the Mediterranean and Palestine. It was an important trip for him. The book which grew out of it, Innocents Abroad, established his reputation as a writer. On the journey, he met his future brother-in-law, too. Charlie Langdon showed him an ivory miniature of his sister, Olivia. Mark Twain was so attracted by the picture of this beautiful girl that he went to Elmira, New York, to meet her. He fell in love with the girl herself, as he had already with her picture. What a good kitty. Before they were married, he bought a part interest in the Buffalo Express with money from his writing. He edited the paper for 2 years, and then they moved to Hartford, Connecticut, which was to be their home for the next 20 years. And the next subheading is Frontiersman in New England. Life in New England had its problems for Mark Twain. He was of the frontier. He had educated himself in the pilot house of a Mississippi steamboat in a raucous mining town and in Western newspaper offices. Life had bred in him little respect for the values of that narrow, genteel society. Their most sacred taboos met with his irreverent laughter. The height of absurdity was reached when selections from one of his books were published in Century, and a school superintendent protested their coarseness, in quotation marks. The editor, though defending the book, nevertheless felt constrained to admit certain crudities. The book was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And that's not the one we just read. We read Tom Sawyer, but maybe we'll read that one another time. Mark Twain's masterpiece, Epic of Boyhood and the River. The American public, however, took Mark Twain to its heart. He was distinctly American. Tom Sawyer, we did read this book, and Huckleberry Finn are born of America. Their adventures could have happened nowhere else. Twain had a sensitive ear for vernacular in which people recognized the speech of the frontier and the American small town. His humor was that of the tall tales of pioneer society. He wrote many books on many subjects, but more and more he turned back to the great river and the small town in which he had grown up. Mark Twain made a fortune in writing and lost it in business. An inventor, James Page, had invented a typesetting machine, which he persuaded Mark Twain would make vast amounts of money. Perhaps Twain was gullible, but he put thousands of dollars into the machine. In the end, it proved worthless. He invested in the Charles L. Webster Company, publishers of General Grant's memoirs. At first, there were huge profits from sales, but gradually the firm failed and went bankrupt. His unsuccessful business ventures had left Mark Twain penniless. He dedicated himself to paying his debts and rebuilding his finances. He took to the lecture platform and was so successful, he was able to pay his debts to the last penny. His white suits and curly silver hair made him a picturesque figure. His manner of telling a story charmed his audiences. He had been born in the time of the comet, and true to its prediction, died in 1910 when Halley's Comet again filled the sky with its brilliant fire. And you remember that happened every 75 years. His books live on. The great river still flows, and Tom and Huck steer their raft on its sunlit waters. I'm going to have to get something to drink. Kitty's moving around. And then come back on. We've got one more section, and it's called Mark Twain Spelunker. And a spelunker, you might know, is one who explores caves. I believe that's what the definition is, or pretty close to it anyway. Okay, I'll be back in a little while, but I'll go ahead and upload this. See you soon.